Rightio. So, preface, I've got COVID, so I don't sound great. Ridley Scott, though, is crap. And even though I sound like crap, my voice is still better than the dog piles he keeps putting out. And yeah, I said it, I called him crap. Now his fanboys can comment away saying how he's a multi-millionaire and doesn't care, or that I'm just a snooty nerd, or that any other insult that their boomer ass thinks is funny, but in reality, they are just a weird uncle at the dinner table that nobody likes. But Ridley, good old Ridley, he's known for two things: historical epics and weird aliens. One of these things he does well, very well. The other he does not even close. He never has done well, and I'm sick of pretending that he did. That brings us to Gladiator 2, the latest shiny turd in his sludge pipe of boomer tier historical movies that are about as authentic as a promise from a politician. So I think it's high time we sit down and have a talk about what historians largely mean by historical accuracy, because I'll let you in on a little secret. We actually love historical movies. We don't care if there's some inaccuracies, we just want effort. Historical accuracy is a term thrown around a lot. Like, a lot. And to be completely honest, unless you were doing a miniseries or a trilogy, quite often you just can't accurately portray events as they occurred. History takes a long time to do anything. It's why the movie Tora takes so long to watch. And if you're not a historian, it's boring. I get it. It's pretty boring. Phenomenal movie, but I understand why people think it's boring. History takes a long time to do anything, so cutting somebody from a narrative or condensing the plot genuinely makes a fair lick of sense. A great example here is the character of Ulania Homyuk in HBO's Chernobyl. She's a composition of dozens of real scientists who actually worked alongside Valery Legasov and Boris Shabina to clean up the disaster in Pripyat and Chernobyl and the surrounding zone. It's a glaring historical inaccuracy that she's in the show at all, but make no mistake, it does not infringe on historical authenticity. Uliana's character is a Belarusian. Belarusians were part of the Soviet Union. She's a woman. Women scientists were a big part of the Soviet Union. She's a composition of many different people, because if you put 60 people on screen, you're not going to remember half of them. It's an inaccuracy, but it's authentic, and that's a key difference. Now, Ridley Scott did this to an extent himself in Kingdom of Heaven with the character Balian, composing him of both a martial lord during Holy Land and the Wars of Saladin, but also your everyday pilgrim crusader on his way to the Holy Land, completely ignoring the reality that the real Balian was a totally different person. He was also kind of a dick, but that's a whole other thing. He was not as good as he was in the movie. This is a way to show authenticity surrounding an event, somebody fleeing the crime to take the cross to find redemption. It's a very common Crusader story. In fact, it was what was encouraged for criminals to do in Europe. But also it's a story of how even the lowest man could rise to command during the Crusades. It's also a story of how the lords and the politics interacted. He did that alright. Kingdom of Heaven has a lot of issues, but that's not one of them. At all. The character of Balian is very much composition. A lot of historians get their knickers in a twist about that, but I understand why he did it. Or at least I hope that's why he did it, because if that's not the reason he chose to do a composition and the reason he did it was just to go, meh, fuck it, which, he does, then yeah, wrong reason. But I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt here. I'm really, really trying to give him the benefit of the doubt on this one. Inaccuracy for authenticity's sake can work. But let's unpack this a bit further looking at Gladiator 2, and yeah, I'm about to spoil the whole plot. The TLDR is Maximus actually boned Commodus' sister, and he is her baby daddy, which is a whole thing because the whole first movie was about his incredible loyalty to his wife and child. Oh, well, never mind that. Lucius, the kid known as Hanno, now lives in Numidia, and it's 200 AD. Now, the movie says at the start, it's been 16 years since Marcus Aurelius died. Yeah, I'll get to those numbers in a moment. Lucius apparently fled after Maximus died in the first movie and ended up in Egypt or something. There's like a pyramid scene that I didn't really get, but whatever. And then somehow Numidia, which is led by Jugurtha, in 200 AD. Yeah, we'll get to that. DEA agent Javier Peña then conquers the city, which somehow has medieval trebuchets in 200 AD, using the exact same shots from the ending of Kingdom of Heaven, and then with water added to them. Oh really? You really didn't think I would notice that? You didn't think anyone would notice that. Lucius then goes to Rome as a prisoner, his wife getting killed in the battle, honestly not important. Neither of them actually do much, they just sort of react to things in the whole movie. Honestly, it's just Maximus Light, but like, he's boring. The actor's fine, the actor's great, but like, the character is just boring. Anyway, he fights some mutant baboon chimp looking dog thing, whatever. Some people make animal noises at him, and then he's sort of made their leader. Really, the animal noise thing is becoming a thing Ridley Scott does. First to Napoleon and with horses.
New in my hair. Okay, come here.
So now this, I'm beginning to question whether or not he's a furry. I'm not really sure. Caracalla and Geta are now emperors in 200 AD. Yeah, I'll get to that. And lo and behold, the general who conquered Numidia and took Lucius as a prisoner is married to Commodus' sister, who apparently had an affair with Maximus and now has a kid. Maximus's character is literally just repeated, but he's split between two characters, so he's just not as good in either way. Anyway, the gladiators fight some dude riding a rhino, which never happened. Also, it's just a repeat of the fight from the first movie with the chariots. Notice that, Ridley. You're just trying to do a Top Gun 2 and it's not working. There's a naval battle in the Colosseum with sharks because reasons. I should clarify. Naval battles in the Colosseum were a thing. They're really, really cool. I forget the name of them because I don't speak Latin, but they're very, very cool. Putting sharks there? Sharks are really hard to transport. You know, with the way their gills work, they need to be moving to, stay alive. So they have to ship the sharks in. So the issue I have with this, one, like, where are you going to get a freshwater shark that big? You're just going to kill the shark. To be more authentic, you could have just put a crocodile in from the Nile, which Romans did, or a hippopotamus, which Romans did. A hippopotamus and a crocodile are far more terrifying than an anemic-looking CGI shark. But yeah, I don't know why he did it. It's just Ridley Scott. Anyway, while this is going on, Agent Pena is getting ready to betray the Psycho Emperors using 5,000 men in Ostia to march on the city, but he is betrayed and taken prisoner during a nighttime riot. That last bit sound familiar? Should be. It's the exact same plot from Gladiator 1. They even got the same old crusty senator to come out and say a few lines before randomly killing him off. Lucius and Pena then fight each other because Pena's a traitor now or whatever. So he has to fight in the arena because Denzel Washington said so. Honestly, none of the characters are that memorable, to be honest. Anyway, they come to an agreement, realizing that although he was in charge when the dude's wife died, that Pena's actually a pretty chill, swell guy and cares about his mom. Anyway, the Praetorians just shoot him because the Emperor's chuck a hissy fit, so yeah, whatever. Pena's dead now, and Lucius is just very angry and he's shouting at people. He never really does the whole I am Maximus Decimus Meridius thing. He just sort of bitches a lot. So, whatever. Macrinus, aka Denzel Washington, meanwhile has made buddy-buddy with the Emperors who are hiding because shooting Pena with arrows was dumb because he's actually a Roman hero and now there's a riot. Caracalla has syphilis or something. He then gets advice while hiding with a teleporting monkey and kills his brother, naming Denzel Washington as consul and his monkey as another. Lucius gets Maximus's armor on because of course he does. Never really makes a thing of it though, there's no big reveal, it's just, oh, he's wearing it now, that's nice. Then he frees the gladiators after beating someone up, sends a rider with a ring with Maximus's old name on it to the Legion in Ostia, because, third time's the charm, right, let's do this plot again. He tries to save his mum, who's now in the middle of the arena because she was married to Javier Pena, who died, and then now she's going to get executed because of psycho Roman reasons. But she gets killed by Denzel Washington. That senator, the crusty one that I mentioned, finally gets stabbed. There's a riot. Caracalla gets stabbed in the ear, which was just... It was gruesome for no reason's sake. Like, I get it. You're trying to make a gritty movie, but it just seemed a bit stupid. Anyway, there's a riot. Macrinus is now in charge because reasons. I don't know. Reasons. And he rides his horse out past the Praetorian army who he's in charge of to go and talk to the Legion that's coming to invade the city who already hate him. And then that giant Praetorian Legion somehow lets this gladiator who's just run out of the arena on a horse ride through it. And then Denzel Washington's character, who's technically in charge of all the Romans there, doesn't order him to get killed. He just sort of decides as a 60-year-old man to fight a bodybuilding gladiator. He dies. Shockingly, I know. And then the new republic is proclaimed and everyone uses kisses and happy. That's the plot. It's predictable, it's dull, and it's meh. Kind of looks pretty. None of the characters really matter. Even the ones that are brought back from Gladiator 1. It's just like, oh yeah, it's that guy. Oh yeah, it's that guy. And the plot was just Gladiator 1 all over again, but less good in every way. Honestly, if you want to watch Gladiator 2, just watch Gladiator 1 on a 4K TV and you're all set. So obviously, this is a work of fiction. Sure, that's fine. It's a movie, not a documentary. I get that. Same can be said of Kingdom of Heaven, Gladiator 1, and other movies he's made. The problem I have is that he clearly has all the tools to world build, to be authentic, to build a beautiful world, and he actively chooses not to. In fact, he makes choices that are a direct mockery of the time period and the cultures for no reason whatsoever. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, during the movie, the characters recite poetry and lines that is genuine poetry from the ancient period. One of the lines commonly said throughout the movie is, "Where death is, we are not. Where we are, death is not." It's a quote repeated non-stop, and it's by the Greek philosopher Epicurus. Greek philosophy at the time was something studied in length by the Romans. This is some pretty damning evidence that Scott has people around him that know the history, they know the context. He uses the names of ancient leaders like Jugurtha, like Macrinus, Caracalla, Geta, yet he flat out ignores the real people to make his own fictionalized, dumbed down versions of them. He did this with Napoleon too. Instead of making the man who redrew Europe, he made a washed out incel looking weird vibey dude who reminds me of someone who just got booted from my Discord for being a creeper. Have a shower. Honestly, like, that's how disgusting it's just, whatever. That's the vibe Napoleon by Ridley Scott gives off. It's just go have a shower. You need it. There are genuine hints of authenticity here with the armor that soldiers and characters are wearing, but the basics are just ignored. Clips on back to front and the armbands. Good God in heaven, the armbands. For some reason, known only to God himself, Scott and every other Roman film director is obsessed with dinky leather armbands. They are not a thing, they were never a thing, yet everyone is wearing one. It irrationally annoys me, and I don't know anyone else who gets this annoyed about it, but I just do because it's stupid. And when I see these dumb things, I can't stop but sigh because they are dumb. They can't stop a strike, they remove wrist movement, they're not in any of the contemporary sources that we have, yet for some stupid reason, they get put on every Roman character in every movie. I swear to God, it is the dumbest thing ever. It's like Praetorians wearing black armor. It wasn't a thing. Praetorians did not wear black armor. They did not cover themselves in purple. Purple dye was expensive. That's why everyone freaked out when Caesar started wearing purple, because it was an imperial color. They thought he was about to call himself king. Rant over. That's just a petty thing. It's stupid, but whatever. But let's discuss some of the more glaring inaccuracies of the movie, because that's what you're here for, let's be honest. You're here to see me do that, and to probably mock me in the comments if you're a Ridley Scott fanboy for reasons. Let's start with the characters. Again, this is a fairy tale work of fiction, but given that good old Ridley has decided to half-hitch his cash cow to real people with real-world stories and meanings, we do need to actually look at the characters he's used. Firstly, Lucius, the main character, who was just not needed in the film at all and didn't really do anything until the end. Honestly, if you just remove Lucius's character, like, completely, and just focus the movie on Pedro Pascal's Acacius, who I've been calling Javier Pena because Narcos is a much better indicator of how good of an actor he is, the movie would have been better. Because I would have just followed one person instead of, like, 3 different people who do nothing. But anyway, the real Lucius died as a kid, so his whole life is a fiction. Similar to his mother, who is in the movie and plays a big part, who Commodus killed when he was back in charge. It's really, yeah, they're completely fictionalized for the purpose of the film. Whatever, it's just worth pointing out. Now, Pedro Pascal's character didn't exist at all, and at a cursory glance, his family name is based on a Greek name. I think there may have been some liturgical connections with him when it comes to the Greek Orthodox Church, but honestly, I have no idea. I really didn't look into it too much further than disproving the fact that it wasn't a real fat person, so yeah. But either way, not important, because he's the best part of the movie. Because he's just Maximus with a better haircut. I kid you not, he is just Maximus. He wants to go home after a big campaign to his wife. He tries to overthrow the evil emperor and his wife gets murdered. He dies in the arena. His death is the spark. His soldiers are in Ostia waiting to overthrow the evil. He is just Maximus. Honestly, if you just put Russell Crowe there and de-aged him a bit, it'd work the same, honestly. Work the same. Then we get to Macrinus, aka Denzel Washington. Now he's a bit of a nobody in history. He briefly becomes emperor, then dies during the crisis of the 3rd century in a pretty brutal way in Syria, I believe. But it should be mentioned the choice of Denzel Washington to play him is a bit questionable, given that it is likely based on the sources that we have that he was a Semite of some kind. But saying that, Denzel Washington is Denzel Washington, and he plays the character very, very well, or as well as it could be played. But I take a big issue with the casting for one particular reason. The fact they made him a former slave. Now, the real Macrinus was of low standing, a poor pleb by birth, but he was never a slave. I genuinely cannot see the reason why it was necessary to include, save for the fact that Denzel Washington is black. This just feels like a cheap way for Ridley Scott to pander and get views. Just to say, oh look, the black guy who was a slave to the white guy. He's now big and in charge. It just cheapens everything. It's clear why he did it. It's a way to sell tickets. But just being authentic to history here, being a rags to riches story makes sense too. This just feels like a conscious, disturbing decision by the filmmakers to cheapen the historical suffering of slaves to try and write it into a plot about a movie where it's completely irrelevant. But that pales in comparison to what he did with Jugurtha, who is getting his own section on this video because the Jugurtha reasoning is the whole purpose of me making this video because it pissed me off. Alright, so before we get into Jugurtha, we have Caracalla and Geta as Emperor in 200 AD. Yeah, I'll get to that. And they were depicted as weak, feeble, insane psychos, which goes pretty well against all the primary sources we have. For example, Geta is shown to be flashy and over the top, and yeah, he might have been. One source says that he was extravagant, the other says he wasn't. Keep in mind, a lot of the sources on Roman emperors come from after the fact, written by other emperors who don't exactly like them, so there's a lot of propaganda that goes on there. But on the other hand, we wouldn't know because Caracalla murdered him in front of their mother a few months after their father declared them joint rulers. Now, Caracalla and Geta are absolutely wild because they hated each other so much that the imperial palace had to be split down the half, like they had to draw a line on the floor. It was that bad. Now, Caracalla, though, was not a syphilis-filled sick man who was obsessed with a capuchin monkey that somehow teleported from South America to Italy in 200 AD. Yes, the monkey he's walking around with the whole time is from South America. It's stupid. Just get a monkey from Africa. It's not hard to try. It's not hard to try. In fact, it probably would have cost less to get a cheaper monkey than a rich capuchin. Caracalla, though, was a very martial and strong man. He was well built, he was strong, he was cruel, he was vicious. He would brutally oppress and massacre cities for defying him, and he would do it happily himself. He wouldn't sit there and whimper. Caracalla in this movie was ridiculous, he was a child, and it makes no sense. Caracalla was literally so unneeded. Geta was unneeded as well, actually. In hindsight, you could have killed Geta off at the start, shown how psycho Caracalla was, and then just had Caracalla being a complete nutcase the whole time. He didn't have to be some feeble psycho idiot. Not the actor's fault. Actor played the role he was given very well, mind you. The movie was just trash. This leaves just one major character, and it's the one that I have the biggest problem with, and it's Jugurtha. Now, ignoring the fact that the timeline in this movie is just absolutely screwed and that Jugurtha was the king of Numidia from 118 to 105 BC, not 200 AD, he's about 300 years out of place here, and he was actually defeated by Marius when Rome was a republic, and that this region was by 200 AD the Roman province of Africa Proconsularis. But ignoring all that, ignoring the reason that Ridley Scott chose to use Jugurtha over an adversary like the Celts or the Germans or the Persians, I take extreme issue with the choice to cast the British Ghanaian actor Peter Mensah as the barbarian chieftain. That's a quote from the movie. I should clarify, I have no issue with his acting. I think Peter is a phenomenal actor, and I encourage you to watch things that he acts in because he is a brilliant actor. But Jugurtha was not a black sub-Saharan African. He was the king of Numidia in North Africa, and the choice to make him a sub-Saharan African is problematic at best and downright disgusting at worst. Let me extrapolate on that, because before you type your comments calling me a dirty racist, I will explain why it is actually the opposite reasoning. This is Africa. All of it. And contrary to disturbing popular belief, it is not one country or culture. Africans come in all shapes and sizes: Semitic, Sub-Saharan, West Africans, Southern Africans, and more. When Hollywood directors choose to simply go, yeah, they're African, so like, this can be an African, it cheapens so much history and culture. Sub-Saharan Africa has an incredible history. In Zimbabwe, we have ruins of today of a great ancient walled city. This part of the world has a history. It is incredible. By choosing to just force people into these roles, you not only cheapen and dampen the history of the person you are casting, but you also shoot in the foot attempts to bring the lost cultures that are ignored to the light. If Ridley Scott actually cared about diversity in his films, other than just pandering, which I'm convinced he isn't, and he's just getting the money to fund these vanity projects while he goes senile with old age, he would have made the combat against Askim. If he really wanted a black adversary, he would have made it against Askim, or another Nubian kingdom, a genuine kingdom of black Nubians, such as Askim, fought Rome and was in contact with him during this period. Further to this, Jugurtha is a person today who is somebody who is seen as a freedom fighter for the independence of North Africa, specifically in Algeria and Tunisia, and he fought an incredible war against the Romans, quite often coming out on top and holding them off. Truly, the Jugurthine War is worth researching, and I may come back to it in future. In the meantime, Mike Duncan's Storm Before the Storm covers it in a fantastic way. Algerians and Tunisians, North Africans in general, are not sub-Saharan Africans. In fact, generally speaking, they look like this. I like to think Ridley Scott isn't stupid enough to believe all Africans look the same, but I do wonder. In saying that, this isn't the first time Ridley Scott has disrespected an entire nation, religion, or cultural group. His depiction of Catholicism in Kingdom of Heaven and Islam was so disturbingly wrong it's comedic. He depicts Islam as this peace-loving, complete, happy-go-lucky, oh look at us, oh we hold hands, oh look at us, religion in Kingdom of Heaven, during the era of the Caliphate, who was in a holy war with the Catholics, who were not psychopath murderers the whole time. That's a complete disgusting understanding of piety and religion, just like the happy-go-lucky version is a complete misunderstanding of it. It is a disgusting bit of propaganda in the post-9/11 world, and he released that movie in a period in the post-9/11 world, and I know exactly what he was doing with that. It's not hard to see what he was doing with that at all. The reality is, in Kingdom of Heaven, he depicts an innocent party and a non-innocent party. In real life, both religions went to war with each other, both committed horrific atrocities, both conquered lands, subjugated people. History's great, it's not black and white. It never was black and white. And people like Ridley Scott are part of the problem. Not to mention the way he depicted Somalis in Black Hawk Down. So it shouldn't be exactly surprising that Ridley Scott does not care on the way he depicts cultures and people. The choice to make Jugurtha a Ghanaian makes zero sense, other than the fact you want token representation. If you actually want to represent an African kingdom during this period, you can go to Nubia. You can go to the Nubians. You don't have to co-opt an already forgotten and downtrodden cultural group who spent the last 200 years being told they don't exist by the French, basically, and subjugated by the French. Not to mention what Islam did to that group as well, when it subjugated their cultures and beliefs. And then the Romans too on top of that. By taking away their heroes, it is a very disturbing thought. This is the equivalent as if someone depicted George Washington as a Tibetan man. He's not. He's just not. It's a very stupid thing to do. You want to tell a story about a black African chieftain? Do it, for the love of God, do it. Because they are fascinating. I would sit for hours watching a mini-series on Mance Mutha, or any of the other amazing kings and stories from Sub-Saharan Africa, the Sahel. There are incredible stories there. Yet Ridley doesn't care about that. It's just a way to make money. So that brings me back to the point of authenticity and why it's important. See, Scott can tell the story with all these characters in this way he wants, sure. But if he was just slightly more authentic, just even a little bit, the film would actually be watchable and far better. If you really wanted to depict a conquest in Africa, make it Ascom, make it another tribe or a kingdom. Don't go and dig up Jugurtha from 300 years before the film's setting. Actually put some effort in. Hell, if you want to be vaguely accurate to the time period, go to Palmyra. Look at Zenobia. There's so many options here. On top of that, mind you, if you do go and take the person from history, maybe respect them, and don't have them flop over and die to some weird baboon chimp mutant dog CGI mess that looks pretty crap, mind you. And have them killed in the right way. Have them paraded through the streets of Rome and then strangled ignominiously, because that's what happened to Jugurtha. Now on that, let's look at this film's stupid timeline. The movie opens with the line that it has been 16 years since the death of Marcus Aurelius, and that the empire has fallen under the rule of two brothers, Caracalla and Geta. The film then flashes to a siege in Numidia, which is about 300 years or so removed, as I've said, from the timeline, but whatever, and on screen, it says that the film is set in 200 AD. Now, Marcus Aurelius died in 180 AD. 180 AD. 200 AD. 16 years. The math is not mathing, Ridley. The math is not mathing. Such little effort. It's a subtitle. All you had to do was change a subtitle. Then onto that, we have the fact Caracalla and Geta are emperors in 200 AD. They weren't. Their father Septimius Severus was from 193 to 211. I really do not understand why this was done. I genuinely just don't understand it. Why not just try? Just try to be a little authentic, but whatever. Instead of just making stuff up. Again, I understand it's a work of historical fiction, but there's just so little effort. You do not have to be perfect with dates. Hell, you don't even need to say the date. In fact, the fact that these movies are presented as historical events is what gets me the most, when Scott clearly cares so little that he doesn't bother. Normally when someone is wrong about events and dates with films, you put it down to propaganda, and I know a lot of French viewers felt that Napoleon was just peddling English propaganda, but it wasn't, because he omitted everything the British Empire did during the Napoleonic Wars, then made a mockery at Waterloo. It can't exactly be a case of him desperately making money because he's rich, so no, I genuinely can't see a reason why Ridley Scott is so hopeless at historical authenticity, other than the fact that he has lived in an echo chamber of his own ego for so long that nobody says no. I mean, have a look at this clip and tell me that isn't the case, because it sounds like it.
And what I want to do is start the film in Styx on the edge of the ocean. And you see him, this warrior wandering in armor there, and it's Maximus wandering, looking for where he's going to go next.
Wow, that's cool.
That's amazing.
Oh,
Now, that's c'est moi.
It's just, yes, go Queen, slay. That's all it is. That's all he gets. The worst part is that he can make good movies. He can make incredible movies. The Martian is one of the best movies I've ever seen. And yeah, it's very different from the book, which is also brilliant. But it's such a good film. Alien is considered one of the best horror movies ever made. But then he makes things like Exodus, Gods and Kings, which don't even get me started on that. Gladiator 2, Napoleon, and he makes them quicker and quicker, and it's just a sludge pipe of lazy. It's just drivel that makes no sense. That is a bad fan fiction that you would expect to read on Wattpad. So, do movies need to be accurate? With all that said and done, do movies need to be historically accurate? No, they don't. You can have a complete work of fiction and still make it the most authentic film imaginable. For that, I want to introduce you all to an actual good director. The GOAT even, when it comes to the historical epic. And I mean the real GOAT, not whatever Ridley Scott thinks he is and whatever he's gassed up to be. And that's Peter Weir. Peter Weir created 3 films in particular that warrant examination here as examples of incredible works of historical fiction just oozing with authenticity. The first one is his 1980s era film on Gallipoli, a film that covers the campaign from World War I in the perspective of young boys sent off to fight from Australia. This fiction is mired in authenticity, and the feelings and emotions surrounding the Anzac spirit that it brings out bring it to the pinnacle film of understanding the campaign from the Australian perspective. Then of course there is his 2010 film The Way Back, which discusses the long walk from Siberia to India by Polish prisoners of war to get their freedom from gulags. Now it is likely the people depicted never undertook this walk, and there's a lot of controversy surrounding it, that it was a fantasy. But there is evidence that prisoners other than them did undertake the insane journey to find their way home and gain freedom. We have evidence that it is likely. Again, this is just an example of authenticity within historical fiction making a good movie. And finally, we have the greatest historical fiction of all time, one of the best movies ever made, Master and Commander: The Far Side of the World. But ho, Peter Weir had a book written for him when he directed Master and Commander. Yeah, he did. The Aubrey Maturin series created the characters, and they are incredible books. But the movie is loosely inspired by them. The story is somewhat based on a few books in the series. Desolation Island and The Far Side of the World are two very prevalent ones. But it is widely changed. Instead of hunting an American frigate, for example, the ship was chasing a French warship across the world. This was of course done because it was seen that Americans couldn't handle being seen as the bad guy in a movie theatre. Master and Commander showcases the very best of positive masculinity. It tells a story with no basis in historical events, but with authenticity in a wider world surrounding the events shown. Be it the design of the ships, the backdrop of the Napoleonic War, the food being eaten, the uniforms, the shanties. It's historically authentic. It's inaccurate as hell, but it's authentic. It transports you to that world. The extras in the background aren't just walking around doing nothing. They're there doing jobs on the ship. It's authentic. It breathes realism. And that is all we want. That is all historians want, is respecting history in film. It doesn't have to be hours of slow talking. You don't have to get every single person who was the clerk or whatever into the movie. Just respect the setting. Respect the sources. Respect the cultures you are being paid millions of dollars to depict. Ridley Scott either refuses or is simply too lazy to do that. He is nothing more than just another old vain up himself Hollywood type past his use by date. He is everything wrong with Hollywood. He's crap. And Gladiator 2. Crap history, pretty visuals, and mid story. Honestly, it's really not worth paying to see it, but if you want to kill a few hours and watch some nice visuals, go and watch Gladiator 1 on a 4K TV, you won't be missing much. It's the same plot, just recycled, for some cheap money. Makes sense why he sludge piped this one out a year after Napoleon came out. His fanboys can now proceed to whinge in the comments. Everyone can say I'm woke, they can call me whinging, whatever. Please comment in excruciating detail about how I'm wrong about everything. I won't say no to the algorithm boost, and you just give me more money. So, please go ahead. I encourage it. Love you. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll catch you all later. I apologize for my voice. I have COVID. I can't fight it. Whatever. I needed to put a video out because, I like to eat food.